I read 17 books in the month of March, and here are my thoughts on all of them. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. As mentioned, today we have my March reading wrap up. Y'all, March was a really good reading month for me. I had 3 5-star reads this month, which I feel like for me is unheard of. Usually I'm lucky if I can get even 1 5-star read, but no, this month we had banger after banger. Plus, it was the trans rights readathon at the end of the month, so I will also be highlighting the books that I read for the readathon. Lots of great ones from the readathon as well. This month I read 6,391 pages and listened to 144 hours. This time, 71% of the books that I listened to were audiobooks, 24% were print copies, and only 8% were digital. I think this is mainly because now NetGalley doesn't really support the same file type that you used to be able to read ARCs on a Kobo, and I own a Kobo, I don't own any other e-reader, so now I can't even use my Kobo to read my digital ARCs that I get from NetGalley, and so I have to resort to like my phone or wait for the print copy or just get like the audiobook when it releases, which is really sad because ARCs used to be like the main way that I would read books in the past, and now I feel like I can't even keep up with them anymore ahead of the release date because I just don't have a way to read them. But NetGalley did announce that they're working on a solution with Kobo to get ARC copies from NetGalley over to Kobo, so hopefully soon we will have a way to do that again. But yeah, it just really sucks because now I barely touch my Kobo anymore. This month also, the source that I got each book from was a little different. Only 35% of the books that I read this month were from Libby. Usually it's a higher percentage. I read more print copy books this month, almost 30% of them. 12% were from NetGalley, 12% were from Hoopla, and then 6% were from BookTube, and then another 6% from LibreFM. I said that I read 17 books this month, but one of those books was a secret manuscript that I was sensitivity reading for. I can't really give many details about the book, but all I will say is that I really liked it, and I think fans of this author's books will really enjoy this newest release. It was very fun. I can't wait for it to come out. I can't wait for everyone to read it. But for now, I'll talk about the other 16 books that I read this month. Okay, starting off with the first audiobook that I listened to, it was Unsteady and Unloved by Peyton Corinne. I have the print copy of Unloved. These are basically hockey romances, but on a much more serious tone than something like Icebreaker. Unloved specifically features an FMC who is the sole guardian of her 2 kid brothers. She and her brothers deal with parental abandonment, child abuse, as well as one of their parents suffering from alcoholism. She also gets body shamed and abused by her figure skating coach. And then on the other hand, our MMC has pretty severe panic attacks. So as you can tell, there are a lot of heavy topics throughout the book, and I feel like it was hard for me to keep my mind from moving from the heavy topics to the lighter romance and vice versa. Like I felt like I was getting whiplash with the way that we were talking about such like heavy, terrible things that were happening to both the MMC and the FMC, and then we get like a spicy scene and it would just be like really jarring and it would completely take me out of the book. I feel like overall I enjoyed Unloved over Unsteady. Don't get me wrong, Unloved is also heavy. The FMC has a verbally and emotionally abusive boyfriend, not the MMC. And then the MMC is groomed by a professor at the college that all these characters go to. So yeah, it's a lot, but I feel like in Unloved, it was a lot easier to read through the scenes. Like the tone was kind of the same throughout. I feel like the author did a better job of integrating those heavier moments with the romance. Next, I read Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. I won't go into too much detail about this because I have a whole separate Oathbound reading blog coming out. That blog will have spoilers. It will go into much more detail about the book if you're looking for something like that, but I'll just go through a spoiler-free review right now, and that is that this book is excellent. It was probably my favorite read of 2025, like I can say that definitively now. It didn't feel like a filler book. I loved all of the multi-POVs. I loved the direction that Bree's journey went in this book. I started this out with the audiobook and then I switched over to the ebook because I just needed to lock in and see the words in front of me. My copy didn't arrive until like the following Tuesday, like literally a week after the book was released, so I'm glad that I got the ebook copy as well. And I love these characters so much. Like, that is family right there. Obviously, if you've read the book, you'll probably understand when I say that I was very shocked with the way that this book ended. I cannot wait for book 4, no matter how long we have to wait for it. I just like continue to be in awe of Tracy Deonn's writing, and I'm so in love with this series and these characters, and I just truly cannot get enough. Then I read an arc of Maya and Multicolor by Swati Tirthala. This is a very cute YA Daisy romance set in college. It follows our main character Maya, who's a college freshman, and she is really set on planning the Holy Festival that's going to be held at her campus. And then we have our MC Nishant, who is a junior at the school, and he's kind of like the resident playboy. He also really wants to plan the Holy Festival as well. He's a DJ, so he really wants to bring the music component to the festival, while Maya's very fixed on a lot of the cultural aspects. Nishant keeps arguing that they could just have like a fusion of like modern and more traditional customs, but Maya's very set on like just having the more traditional celebration. So in order to get Maya to agree to join forces to plan this festival, he pitches this idea to Maya, who is trying to get over her ex, who was a terrible boyfriend to her, that he'll set her up on different dates with various students at their school. So he literally like finds different guys for Maya to go out with. In exchange, they'll work together to put on the festival. I feel like this book was very realistic to my personal college experience, especially as someone who was pretty well connected to the South Asian community on campus. I feel like the depictions of all the South Asian orgs that are on campus was very accurate. I've loved every single one of Swati Tirthala's romances, and this was just another banger for me. Highly recommend them for anyone seeking like a Desi contemporary romance or even a Desi fantasy. Also, the cover is just like so gorgeous, and I really love the fact that we have a book about Holi. Holi, in my opinion, is one of the best and most underrated celebration in Hinduism, and so I'm just really happy that we have a book celebrating it. The next audiobook that I listened to was Queen of Shadows and Ruin by Nisha J. Tooley. This is the last book in the Nightfire Quartet. This is Nisha's other South Asian fantasy romance series. I feel like it's more heavy on the South Asian mythology and traditions and culture, whereas the Artifacts of Arano series is a bit more of a Western fantasy. I read the first 3 books in this series as ebooks, and I probably should have done the same, but I decided to switch over to the audiobook because it was available on Hoopla. But I feel like with the audiobook, it was kind of hard to follow along about what was happening. The narrator specifically, I felt like was unable to pronounce a lot of the Desi terms and names in the book, and that was just really taking me out of the book. But overall, it was a solid conclusion to the series. I feel like Zarya's story was such a wild journey from book 1 to book 4. I can't believe how far she and all the characters have come throughout the series. I feel like Zarya herself had really great character development. I'm so proud of everything she accomplished, and of course the romance between Zarya and Robin in this book was so high heat. I loved it. This book has a very angsty subplot between them, kind of like in the middle to the end of the book, which I really love. Cannot recommend the series enough for my romantasy lovers who are seeking more diverse representation and diverse mythology and worlds in their romantasy books. Then I read a graphic novel called Brielle and the Bear. This is an art copy, so all the art was like black and white, but I believe in the finished copy it will be actually like colored. I don't read a ton of graphic novels, but this one was really cute. It's set in high school. It follows this quiet, shy, bookish girl named Brielle, and then a rugby player named Bear, and it kind of has the same typical formula of your high school teen romance. It was really cute. I especially appreciated how diverse this cast of characters was. It's a very quick, fast read if you're looking for like a diverse graphic novel, especially one written by a Black author. This is also the first installment, I believe, so I'll definitely be checking out the rest. Then I listened to the audiobook I Am Made of Death. This is a YA horror fantasy book with a romance subplot. It follows a teen heiress named Vivian who is selective mute after she suffers this incident when she was 4, where she basically went missing and no one really knows what happened to her like while she was gone. And then after she was found, she just did not speak. When she does speak, anyone who listens to her voice suffers a horrible death. So her voice has literally become this deadly poison now. Now she's much older and her parents want to hire an interpreter for her. That's where we get our MMC Thomas, who jumps at the opportunity to be hired. He is the son of a deaf parent who wants to use the money to pay for his mother's medical bills. He doesn't realize that Vivian is actually being haunted by this entity ever since she went missing when she was young, and she's determined to get this surgical exorcism performed so that she can finally regain control of her body. She's trying to get rid of Thomas so that she can go get this exorcism done, but Thomas isn't willing to get rid of this girl that he's falling for, no matter what dark powers predators are threatening to overtake them. So as you can tell, the premise of this book is super interesting. I feel like the romance is also pretty fast-paced and the horror keeps you at the edge of your seat. I will say though, I feel like I had a hard time focusing on like the middle chunk of the book, not necessarily because of the book itself, because I was going through like other personal things in my life. The ending is pretty action-packed and it does feature pretty big cameo appearances of characters from Kelly Andrews' previous YA horror book, The Whispering Dark. That was pretty fun to see, and it kind of confirms that these books are set in the same universe. My next audiobook was Until I'm Yours by Kennedy Ryan. This audiobook was incredible. I've been telling you guys how much I love this series. I've been reading like every installment each month so far in 2025. We're finally at the fourth and final book. This last book follows Sophie, a supermodel, which if you remember, she was in this arranged engagement with Walsh, who is the MMC of the first two books. And in those two books, she's kind of painted as a supervillain, but in this book you really get to understand her perspective and personality, and I really liked her. Our MMC is Trevor, who is this businessman that is determined to break down Sophie's walls. He figures that this armor that she's built around herself is because the world has hurt her too many times, and he is correct. I've mentioned how some of the books in the series deal with pretty heavy topics, and so does this one. It deals a lot with rape and sexual assault and being a victim of that kind of violence and standing up for yourself in a very public manner. I think this book was originally written before the Me Too movement. Yeah, it says 2016, so I think that's kind of like where a lot of the themes in this book come from. So you might feel like it's a little repetitive if you've already seen a lot of books that deal with this kind of storyline, but it still was really powerful. I really loved the messaging in this book, and I really loved the romance. Once again, the romantic dialogue killed me. I missed Kennedy Ryan's writing so much. I'm so excited for Can't Get Enough. I'm probably gonna read that in like the next couple months, and if you're a fan of her works as well, I highly recommend this series. The next book that I picked up was First Time Caller by BK Borison, and this was in preparation for meeting BK at Shelves in the City. I really love this. It was so adorable. I'd only read Love Light Farms by her, the first installment, but I personally enjoyed First Time Caller much better. It follows Lucy, who's a single mom, and one night her daughter Maya calls into this local romance hotline at this radio station called Heartstrings and starts talking to the radio host Aiden Valentine, or MMC, about kind of the issues that she thinks her mom is going through. And then Lucy like hears her daughter like talking in the middle of the night on the phone and assumes that Aiden is some sort of creep. So she like grabs the phone and is like, who is this? And then eventually she starts talking to Aiden, and they kind of start talking about Lucy's love life and like what she's looking for in a relationship, if she wants a relationship, etc. And that snippet and like dialogue of them talking goes viral on social media, and the station manager is like, you know, we should bring Lucy back on the show and have her be a guest star in this segment where we have callers call the station and try to pitch themselves as dates for Lucy, and then eventually she can find the one. And so Lucy and Aiden start this new segment on Heartstrings, and over the course of them running this segment, they fall in love. Their chemistry and banter was so strong in this book. There were so many scenes and dialogue that I highlighted, and even though like the banter is pretty witty and sharp, I feel like overall their romance was very gentle and magical. And I just really love the community that surrounded Lucy throughout this book, like not just Maya, but also Grayson, who is her baby daddy, and then Grayson's partner Mateo, and then all the people she works with at her auto mechanic shop, and then Jackson and Maggie, and then also all the Heartstring listeners. The ending of the book was also super sweet. There's a moment where Aiden calls into the station, and I won't spoil exactly where, but he says, long time listener, first time caller, and that's where you get the title of the book, and that moment was so special. Also, if you've read this book, the full circle moment at the end when they're at the Skullduggery Cafe and Aiden has that realization, you know, but that moment was also so magical. And then I listened to my next 5-star read, which is also a book that absolutely devastated me, just like Oathbound, Sunrise on the Reaping by the one, the only Suzanne Collins. I like kind of totally forgot that this book was coming out in March, but the minute that I found it on Hoopla, the night before that it released, I immediately downloaded it. I don't even think I was planning to read it in March, but I just saw it sitting there and I was like, I have to read this. And fun fact about me is that I did not read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I just didn't really care for that book. I didn't really want to read a book from Snow's perspective. I did end up seeing the movie, and I feel like the movie was enough for me to kind of understand what was going on and understand the motivations that Snow had through this universe. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of the original series. I've seen all the movies. I've read all the books. I love them with my whole heart. I actually read The Hunger Games in 5th grade. I was so young, probably too young to be reading that book, because I truly don't think I understood the implications in that series and the themes and the messaging that Suzanne Collins was trying trying to convey. And I haven't picked up a Hunger Games book since, so it was really interesting to go back to Sunrise on the Reaping right now. Like, what, 15 years later or something? But anyways, Sunrise on the Reaping was everything, and also the worst thing ever. I immediately felt like I was taking hit after hit reading the first like couple pages of this book, and then the remainder of the book was no different, but probably arguably much worse. By the time I got to the last few chapters and epilogue, I was sick to my stomach. I will insert clips of me just like sobbing as I was listening to the last few chapters. Anyways, without spoiling anything, I feel like this book is such a wild ride for Hunger Games fans. I was not expecting the amount of Easter eggs, lore drops, and connections from this book and Haymitch's stories and Haymitch's games to Katniss's story and Katniss's games, but then also of course from Ballad and Songbirds and Snakes. I definitely think that this book is a must-read for any Hunger Games fan, and obviously the series as a whole for folks who have never read them. Just like listening to Haymitch's love for Lenore Dove, his like pain and rage for the Capitol and the losses that he experiences throughout the games and his life in general, they all hit so hard, especially when you've read parts of Haymitch's story in the original series. And then of course Suzanne offers a ton of political commentary about various things. I feel like the main one was the way that the government manipulates things that are happening to the public in order to get the public on their side. A lot of commentary about propaganda, a lot of commentary even about the use of like AI, which is kind of crazy. There are many strong ties to things that are happening in our world today, and it is so crazy to me that commentary that she put in the original series, which was a critique of the way the media was responding to the invasion in Iraq at the time, like none of that mentality or events have changed in the past 15 years or so, which is yes, insane, but also just really, really sad if you think about it. I definitely will be side-eyeing anyone who talks about this book and celebrates this book without even saying a word about what's going on in our real world or even just making that connection, because to me there is no way that you could sit down and read this series without thinking about connections to what's going on in today's political climate. And also will be side-eyeing anyone who reads this book and still claims that books aren't political, or just like simply doesn't call out the injustices that we're seeing, not even in our own country, but abroad as well. And people who stay silent on the injustices that we're experiencing across the world as well. Anyways, Haymitch, I just want to give him a hug and protect him with my life. I think my favorite character was Maisley. She is such a diva queen. I loved her so much. I cannot wait to see all of them on screen next year in the fall of 2026. I will be sat in the theater and sobbing with the rest of y'all. If I think too hard about the epilogue, I will probably start crying. I cried multiple times rereading it and just like recapping what happened in the book to my friends and family. But yeah, it was truly so devastating. I feel for you if you also suffered through this book. And then right after Sunrise on the Reaping, I read another 5-star read, and that was This Monster of Mine. This book was so good. It was so unique. It was probably like nothing I'd ever read before, but also had like all of my favorite tropes and moments that I love in like fantasy and romance books. I won't lie, when I was like reading the first couple of chapters, I had a really hard time understanding the world building and the magic system and like the words they use to describe the world that they're living in. But essentially this book follows our main character, Sarai, who is an 18-year-old prosecutor, essentially. They use another word for it because this book is like based after ancient Rome. So they use a lot of Latin words to describe the people, the different classes in this world, the different magic, the places, etc. So here, prosecutors are called editors, and they can magically detect lies. Like they can tell when someone is lying when they say something. And then peditors are essentially assigned to these judges called tetrarchs. And the tetrarch that Sarai is assigned to is this guy named Kadra, who is very notorious for being cruel and ruthless in not only his rulings but also the way that he goes about life. The twist to this book is that 4 years earlier, so when Sarai was 14, she had come to this academy to become a peditor, but then she was abducted and beaten up to this like bloody pulp and then thrown off the tower at one of the buildings here and essentially left for dead. She did survive, which is, you know, why 4 years later she's back again working with this guy, but during this attempted murder 4 years ago, the only thing she remembers is this guy's voice. Now she's back 4 years later, she wants to find out who killed her, and when she gets assigned to Kadra and she hears his voice, she realizes it's the same voice that she heard 4 years ago. So now he's the primary suspect. So you have this like whole tension that's going on. Kadra doesn't obviously know that Sarai is the same girl that he tried to kill 4 years ago, and you follow Sarai on this journey to stand up for herself amongst all of her colleagues in this like legal space, but then also solve this mystery of who tried to kill her 4 years ago. So it's a very interesting premise. Obviously, as you can imagine, she and Kadra spend more and more time together. They start having this like forbidden attraction, and that is also very conflicting for her. But yeah, I don't want to spoil too much other than that setup, but I hope that that setup just like entices you to read this book. It was truly so good. It was so good. Okay, the next audiobook that I listened to was Plus Size Player. This is another delicious rom-com from Danielle Allen. It's kind of like the sequel slash follow-up, but also like a standalone novel to Curvy Girl Summer, which I also really enjoyed. I feel like I enjoyed Plus Size Player better. Nina and Russ are two main characters. Their chemistry was through the roof. I could really feel the chemistry and tension between them as they grew from this like fling or like friends with benefits to something more. I really love the way that Russ stood up for and supported Nina throughout the book while acknowledging that she is fully capable of doing so herself. And this book also has a forbidden romance aspect to it, which was very fun to read. It is very spicy, which if you've read Curvy Girl Summer, I'm sure you can understand how, but I feel like the spicy scenes really elevated the chemistry between Russ and Nina. I'm not sure if Danielle Allen has more books planned in this universe, but if she does, I definitely will be reading them. Highly recommend this, especially the audiobook, because it's the same narrator as the Legendborn series, and so that was really cool to listen to both Oathbound and this book back to back. Another audiobook that I listened to this month was The Love Simulation by Etta Easton. I read The Kiss Countdown I think sometime last year, but I think I really enjoyed The Love Simulation more. It gave me Abbott Elementary vibes, specifically between Janine and Gregory. I don't know if that was on purpose. He's a science teacher, his name is Roman, and I feel like he's the same as Gregory, where he's like the quiet, nerdy, bookish MMC, but is secretly like so down bad and very thirsty for the FMC. Because when he actually reveals his feelings for her, and then like from that moment on to the end of the story, he actually seems very hot. Some of the things that were coming out of his mouth, I was like, sir. But yeah, essentially it's a slow burn romance between our FMC, who's the vice principal at this school, the MMC, who's a science teacher. But I feel like this book did a good job of talking about the power imbalance that would be in their relationship if they got together while they were still employed at this school. And then the whole like simulation and astronaut part, because this book kind of like deals with like NASA and astronauts and stuff like that, is the fact that they essentially go on this Mars simulation where they pretend to be literally on Mars in order to win some prize money that will help fund their school. I don't know why I was getting like Among Us vibes, where they're all like different players in this simulation and you can like actually be killed if something in your mission goes wrong, and then they essentially like take you out of the simulation. It's pretty interesting. I don't know if this is a real thing, but that would be fun to participate in. Anyways, yeah, I really love the audiobook. I really like the narration too. I feel like the narrator did a really good job of portraying the FMC as this very like exuberant, bubbly vice principal. And it's pretty short too, a very quick read. So if you're looking for like a fun, quick black romance to read through that has like kind of a STEM aspect as well, I'd recommend this one. And then for the last week of March, I read 3 books by trans and non-binary authors for the Trans Rights Readathon. The first book was The Prospects by Katie Hoffman. I did this on audio, and I love that they chose a trans narrator for the audiobook as well. This was a very heartwarming baseball romance. I haven't read many baseball romances, but this one was very fun. I really loved the tension between our two main characters, Jean and Louise. It's kind of like a mix of almost like rivals to lovers, but then also like a second chance romance, because the two characters, they used to be former teammates, and then Louise is now transferred onto Jean's team. And there are like many moments where they're either like out on the pitch, I think that's what it's called, I don't really watch baseball, and then also in the locker room where there's like so much tension between them. I really loved it. The next book that I read was an arc of Somatina by Kweke Emezi. I've talked about how much I love Kweke Emezi's books on this channel before. This is another YA book by them, but unlike Pet and Bitter, which are more like magical realism, this book was more kind of like an epic fantasy. I think this book still does a really great job, just like Pet and Bitter, at having really important themes and messages for young readers. There are a lot of family relationships explored in this book, not just like sibling relationships, but also parental relationships, relationships between Somadina, our main character, and her grandparents. I personally really love the sibling relationship in books. I think those types of relationships are my favorite, and and I really like the way that it was portrayed here. I really think that quick YA titles should be taught in schools. I'm sure they are already, but I feel like a lot of these books have really great material for teens and even younger readers to digest. And then the last book that I did for the Trans Rights Readathon was an audiobook of Genderqueer. Aya Kobabe is a non-binary author who uses E, M, and air pronouns, and this book is essentially a memoir about air life, kind of navigating air identity, about first being assigned as a woman, but then starting to realize that they don't really feel like a woman, and perhaps non-binary is a better description of air identity. And even though this memoir is about a non-binary person, I feel like I really related to a lot of the discussions and themes about, first of all, like navigating what it means to be ace, and then also navigating this definition society has placed about what it means to be a woman and sort of the expectations that comes with that. I feel like those were really relatable. I personally highly recommend this memoir as an audiobook format. First of all, it's really short. It was only like a 2-hour read, but in the audiobook it has a full cast. So Maya is doing the narration for Air character, and then all the supporting characters have their own narrators, which was really cool. It was like a full production. Plus, there are like background sound effects and music throughout the book depending on like what is happening in the story. So it was like a full production. I felt like I was like listening to a TV show or something. So yeah, super cool, very quick read, and I really liked Maya's voice as well. Those are all the books that I read in March. Please let me know if there are any that you read and also suffered through, like Oathbound and Sunrise on the Reaping. If you participated in the Trans Rights Readathon, let me know what you read. I will also link a few campaigns that you can donate to help trans individuals. They'll all be in the video description. Otherwise, let me know what your favorite read was in March, and I will see you in our next video. Bye!